всі сюди прийшли. Добрий день ще раз усім.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you very much for visiting us in Ukraine Crisis Media Center. Thank you, Ukraine Crisis Media Center, for accepting the consortium of the defense. Since it was established in 2016, we had the first meeting here on the establishment on this kind of union of the state and non-governmental organization. And we had the consortium with experts, with politicians, with people who are professionals in different fields of defense, and we decided that we need to meet from time to time, and I would like to thank Ukraine Crisis Media Center for this opportunity, and we would like to thank Valery Charlie for this opportunity to have these discussions. Today we're going to speak about the military justice. What is justice for the servicemen? Because this is a painful topic. Recently, the processes which are ongoing regarding two generals and two colonals. This thing which is actually very disturbing for the society, and the story which, of course, I would like to say that we have to keep our emotions, because of course we have so many emotions, and the Russian propaganda is trying to make us emotional and respond to emotional. When going to this room in Kamenets-Podilskyi, it seems like there was explosion next to the recruiting center, military recruiting center. There are the local media who inform me on that, and we know that there was in Pavlograd the explosions. And the main thing here is to be not emotional and to be more solid, and what can help to change us. And today we are going to do this, and we will be discussing the military justice, about this context and what we can decide, what we can do right today. And our today's topic is, do we need the military justice and the military justice for servicemen? And today we have participants online and offline. Let's start from left to right. Mr. Valentin Batrok, Director of the Center for Army Conversion and Disarmament Studies, co-founder of the Defense Information Consortium. Then we have Mr. Lubovets, also from the Viktor Chumak manner. General, the last prosecutor, Chief Military Prosecutor of Ukraine, and Mikhailo Samuz, Director of the New Geopolitics Research Network, co-founder of the Defense Information Consortium. On line we have the General Mayor of Chief General Mayor, Mayor General, Mr. Bohutsky, who was first responsible for the southern and Eastern, then southern, 2014-2015, and now he is working in the scientific field. He is the head of scientific laboratory of military and international humanitarian law of the State Scientific Institution, Institute of Information Security and Law of the National Academy of Legal Sciences of Ukraine, honored lawyer of Ukraine. Also online we have Serhiy Zhures, Director of the Defense Express, co-founder of the Defense Information Consortium, and Alexei Yezhak, National Institute for Strategic Studies, co-founder of the Defense Information Consortium. Thank you for coming, and you can ask questions, and we will try to have discussion, especially when you need clarification. Please do not move too far from the topic of the discussion, and if you need to clarify something, we will try to clarify this information. Let's avoid emotions, but let's show the practical question. I would like to ask Mr. Vladimir Badrak to explain the topic of today's meeting. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank Mr. Valery Charlie, who supports us, and Mr. Vasyl Pakhnyo, who is leading our discussion. That is a second meeting we have, and today we have 5 analytical think tanks, analytical organizations. And why did we decide to discuss this topic? Remember, the last time we agreed that the situation is that the government is making some decisions only when we have quite powerful message from outside. And we can see that the society is interested in this topic, and people are interested in generals. So the military, the generals and mobilization. Unfortunately, it's not resolved completely. So I will try to remind you a few things. But our vision is that that is the complex problem, and we have to resolve everything in the bond. And if we consider the current situation and the recovery and development of the military justice, in this case, the position, our general position, is that it can work in complex, meaning that it should not be separated from the situation. So why do we have this situation? I guess many of you remember 2014 and Ilovaisk and the attempts of the military prosecutor, Mr. Matthews, to resolve this issue. And we were invited to discuss this topic, but if we consider the group of the experts, then we can say that in this expert group, one of them only remained, and there was only one reason for that. They had to sign the agreement, the NDA, and as we are public people, we didn't sign this NDA, and the former worker of the ministry, Mr. Polyakov, stayed there, and without knowing, without understanding the Ilovaisk tragedy, we know that this issue was not resolved. This issue was in political field, and it was presented in the way that people didn't understand why it turned out in this way. The reason was that it was the highest level, and that was a question of the chief general, that is our opinion, the expert observation. And therefore, for us, the question is not whether we have to recover the military justice, but the question is how the military justice can help us to resolve these issues. If we consider the bringing to justice the general, that should be the exceptional experts, and that should be not the judges of the normal courts. I think that is unacceptable. And if we consider the crimes of the commanders and generals, when the commander of the unit requests money or takes the money from the soldiers, and we can see lots of examples of that, lots of these cases, we kind of do not need the military justice. So our position is that we would like to understand this topic better, and we have two experts today with us, and we rely on their opinion, and we want to provide with the government with recommendations and suggestions. But many of us know that in May 2024, we had a powerful conference on these issues, and there were the recommendations, which in fact there was the suggestions to recover the military justice, military courts. So this is not just a new question, but we have the new conditions that are the a big number of unauthorized abandonment of a military unit and similar things. So we have to understand whether we can end it up with the way we started. The first one is a scale up of the units, and it was launched. And to this week, we saw when 5 structures, 5 regiments, they joined the big structures, and now we can see the transformation. We can see the forming of the corpuses, but that is a palliative decision because the organization, because corpus type is different. We have to be talking about corpus division structure, and I do not know whether this question is taken account in the headquarters, but we are relying on the publication as of the 22nd of November, and it was said that moving to the structure, divisional structure, is very expensive. And my opinion is that if we lack resources to shifting to corpus division structure, then we have to take the resources from the other places, because we are talking about the stabilization of the front line, and that is something that is related to the resilience of Ukrainians. And therefore, I'm not going to cover these questions. I just told you the critical areas of work, and I didn't even mention that we, in fact, we are not using some opportunities. We are not using the private military campaigns, and we are not engaged in foreigners. Only one military campaign, a mega consulting group, can engage the prepared can engage around 20,000 on militaries. And now I think that 20 we have to fight for each soldier. So the task of my speech was to show our desires, what we are striving for and what we are striving for. So I hope that in the end of this meeting we will make some conclusions. So in fact, we need to consider the legal components, military justice, in fact, 2 simple words. And in fact, we have to explain it in simple ways. That first of all, it includes a triangle of military prosecutor's office, which is going to work on these cases, military police and military courts. And quite obvious that we do not have either of them. So let's first discuss about the basic things. Do you think that we need to restore this triangle? And is it able? So we kind of started the process, and we can see that the generals are being sued, and the civil court is not able to resolve these kind of issues. Do you think that this kind of triangle would have helped the society? Well, in fact, absolutely correct. Thank you very much, Mr. Vasil, that you mentioned it. We have to first understand the definitions, and then after this we'll be able to understand how it works. So we'll understand, people mostly do not understand what we are talking about. So you name 3 elements which can be the part of the military justice. The first element, that is military police. So let me start from the beginning, from the end, and that will be the first thing I would like to mention. So in other words, do we need a special organ of the pre-court proceedings, and who has to do that? Who has to be in charge of it? So it seems like we have the law enforcement, but nevertheless it is it cannot do anything on the level that is kind of enhanced common curfew squad. So we have the patrols, and they can protect some places and nothing else. So why it's working this way? So why we have the answer. So because if we are talking about the military police, so let's be saying that police has to be full operating police. So that is the authority which has to be doing the operational investigations. So like and in this case, it's going to be pre-court authority. And Do you think our society is ready to establish one more body which will be able to collect the information of the thing which we call tapping, investigation, collecting the information from, I don't know, from on opening, they will be able to open the envelopes, for example. So the National Anti-Corruption Bureau got the right to do the tapping 5 years after it was established. So we can establish military police, but without all of these functions, it's going to be a disabled authority. And they will not be able to do anything because, in fact, to investigate some certain types of crimes, you need to do the investigation, you need to do undercover investigations, and we have nothing of that in our police. Okay, so we are talking about the police, but let's discuss the other risks. The military is the most important thing, and then there is a question: which is the authority where it will belong? The Ministry of Defense. And the police, which is going to do investigation, and will they belong to the Ministry of Defense? What it would be worse? Nothing. Zero. What kind of authority, under which authority they have to be? We would like to say that Ministry of Justice belongs to the Ministry of Justice of the US, and it works in a bit different way, and they have a bit different way of how they serve. So where would we send it? To the National Police, and for example, we have the National Police, National Guard, and we can serve, and there are servicemen serving there. And as for the Ministry of Internal Affairs, that will be logical, and in this case, these police will be able to use the rights and the mandate of the National Police. Will the society agree on that? And what about the society? Will they agree? I'm always asking about that, because unfortunately we do not have the politicians, but I think that the decision on establishment of this kind of institution is a political decision, and typically it has to go through political debates. And unfortunately, we do not have them so far, and we will not have them, because all of these authorities are established because someone wants to get a position and some. And what about the people serving in this national police? If they are serving in the police, then they have to give. Then they have to get the military rank. So the border services, the president, the other ones can give this military rank. Who is going to give them rank? And what is military rank for the militaries? For the servicemen? For the servicemen, that means career promotion, that is being promoted to some other position. And then there is a question, and what about independence? Do we keep the independence from all of those authorities against which police has to be worked? The police, investigating police, the principle of independence of this authority, is it followed? In my opinion, is quite problematic in this case. In this case, we're talking about the military police. The same thing about prosecution. And also in the prosecution, people think that prosecution, we even have we had the provision in the Constitution, and no, we don't. That is a part of the legal branch of power. Do you understand that? And they are supporting the government in the court, and they want the authorities to follow the procedures, pre-court procedures. So that is the. So there are the experts and other types of questions which have to be resolved in the criminal case, in the criminal proceeding, together with the prosecutors. Not against the prosecutors, not instead of prosecutors, but together with the prosecutors. The prosecutor. Military prosecution, I do not know how it will turn out, but that is a final prosecutor. And to be honest, I was not a big supporter of them in the beginning because there was one reason. Someone wants to get the positions and ranks. I was Major General and Machos was Colonel Colonel General. So I had my own interest. That is a conflict, but that is a personal interest because the serviceman has some certain ranks, and that is something you can also get through the military ranks. But all of these arguments we were discussing in the Prosecutor General's office. We are discussing now. And then there is another question. We are returning from the office of the prosecutor to the military police. And I would like to mention another question. So what kind of case they have to work on, the military police? So what kind of crimes? We have a clear of the clear division between the types of crimes. For example, there is anti-corruption, national police, all the rest what doesn't belong to another two authorities, and even those state security service shouldn't be investigating. It's kind of we were discussing for quite a long time the state security service. They have to be cancelled, and it should not be operating because it's illogical. But at the moment, that is what we have, and let it work during the work. So what kind of crime should the military police investigate as the pre-court body? Of course, military and criminal, it's logical. And in fact, we have only 150 articles, and out of them, there are no severe crimes, except for crimes of war crimes, the crime against humanity, violating the rules of law, rules of war, and the rest is not investigated by the military police, and they do not have the processual heading of, and the prosecutor's office can do that. There are other authorities which are doing that. Okay, we can redistribute it, and we can discuss, and we can consider it not from the perspective of the subjective, but from the objective perspective. Okay, we can say that if the military is participating in crime, would be something this military prosecutor's office they can resolve. Okay, so for example, if we're talking about unauthorized abandonment of the military unit, you know how it will be resolved? They would just do an amnesty, because there is no other way. You can even take it. You can even remember it, because investigating these kind of number of crimes which are not the severe crime, and you cannot sue one and detain them in detention center, because we do not have that many places to detain them somewhere. So in fact, we have only one way to amnesty, because it's not a severe crime. And then we have another question. The question regarding the office of the prosecutor and the national police. So what are they going to investigate? Those 150 articles, if we do amnesty to 100,000 people with unauthorized abandonment of the military units, then we will have the generals, and they cannot be judged in the normal course. And then now we're talking about the judges, the civil judges. When we are saying that the generals have to be judged by generals, and then I'm asking who? The military lawyer, or maybe that should be a kind of soldier, because when we are talking about the crimes which are incriminated the people there, where, for example, Kharkivska operation, that are the crimes which, or it is incrimination or something, some kind of assumption. And investigators said that he has assumption that there will be some actions or lack of actions which led to some severe consequences. It's just a fantasy, and these people are not pled guilty at the moment. So who will evaluate it? The military lawyer? No. Okay. But read the Constitution. The judge can be only the person with the university legal education and not younger than 30 years. The Constitution says that can be the judge. So what kind of education should he have, legal or military one? To have enough knowledge and skills, to have enough expertise to judge somehow. There is no other judge who can do that. There is no judge who has this knowledge and skill. There should be only expertise. If there is expertise in place in the institutes of the court expertise, then they should do that. If not, then the experts from the University of Defense have together, and they have to discuss it, and they have the level of they have the access to the classified documents, and that's it. Nothing else is needed. So who should we be preparing as the military judge? The military who has mayor, colonel or someone, and then we send him to Yaroslav Mudry Legal Academy for him to get the preparation to study 5 more years, and after that he will become at least a military judge. Well, quite logically that. Or should we take a lawyer, young lawyer who has just graduated from Yaroslav Mudry Academy? Should he get some military education? What kind of education he has to get? Tactical, because operational will not be available for him. He cannot have this kind of expertise. In fact, after 5 years, you cannot have operational expertise. They do not. They have only tactical level. They have only tactical education and not cooperative tactical education. So that is regarding the law of defense to get operative, military operative skill and to graduate from military academy. So it's not logical. Tell me that they have to be judged by the professional. But what kind of professional? Military or lawyer? All of them are experts. So what do judges rely on when they make the decision on the expertise? Who is doing the expertise? The relevant authorities. Can they do that at the moment? Yes, of course. Then we have another question regarding the prosecutor, regarding the national police, the question regarding the judges. So if we put the uniform on the judges, what will we get? So what we will get in the end of the day? Who is going to give them military ranks? The first question. Who is going to decide on the place of where they serve? The third question. Do you understand that the military court, I don't know, maybe... so there will be the difference. So, for example, Kyiv judges and not Kyiv judges. So who is going to decide where they are going to work? In Kyiv or somewhere else? So the higher qualification commission. So what kind of concern do they have to this matter? Or the High Council of Judges, they have no concern to it. And who is going to give the military rank? So the president, okay. So in this case, it seems like it's not balanced with the presidential branch of power. Then we are dependent from the president, and the president is the chief commander. And will any judge ask any question to the president? For example, Nazarov there were some decisions which were wrong in the beginning of the war. So I doubt that there will be any judge appointed by the president will ask this kind of question. The risks, are we able to respond these risks? Do politicians in society can they respond these risks? Because the question of the dependence or independence of this branch of power is about lack or presence of justice. Because in this question, we want just justice and fairness, and justice is impossible without independence. And if we are saying that we as society, that our system is has civil control, and with super civil control we are ready to work with these risks and to establish military justice with pre-court proceedings, with operational search activities, with procedures, with military courts. By the way, what will be the status of these judges? I just forgotten. We have only 2 special courts in Ukraine, according to our legislation. And by the way, it's funny. We have the specialized courts are forbidden by the constitution. But nevertheless, according to the law on the courts and the status of the judges, we have 2 specialized courts which have both the functions of the first instance and appeal instance. The first one is anti-corruptional one, is what we know, and the second one, no one have heard about it. Can someone say the lawyer somewhere there? So you know everything. So the second court, which has the same functions, do you know what kind of court is it? Constitutional. Can you imagine? We have the court on the intellectual rights, the higher specialized court on the intellectual property. Petro Alexeyevich Poroshenko, the head of his office, of the administration of his office, was Mr. Filatov, and he wanted to be head of this court, but he has established this court. So that is why I want to say that Ukrainian system is when the system are made for the position and not for the tasks. And therefore, we are on the final road. When you are talking about this system of justice, I have a question. Where do we have the lawyers? And where are the lawyers? So we will have militaries, and the lawyers will be civilians. Or the system will be military, or we will have a disabled body. I'm not against the military justice. I would like to have the lieutenant general. I would like to get this, but nevertheless, there is another question. Are we ready to guarantee the independence of this system? Are we ready to see this system in the central authorities, executive authorities, and how it is going to function? I'm not quite sure. So I do not see it there. I'm not against. I'm just not ready. As a former politician, I'm not ready, and I used to be a politician. I also used to be the member of the parliament, not only the prosecutor, and I made some important decisions. And when you're voting for something, you have to be to be just voting because you like voting, but you have to evaluate the consequences, of any kind of voting, and without the evaluation of the consequences, I see no reason to establish something. And I was not even talking about economy. I was not touching this topic, because military courts, military prosecution, military pre-court proceeding body, that are the separate institutions, and they will cost a lot. But I have the option how to make it better. If you want, I will tell how to make it nicer. So, okay, we have only 2 hours of work, and 45 minutes are already gone. So I'd like to You had a very professional discussion. Of course, we would like to hear politicians here and another Mayor General of Justice. Maybe he would also like to be Lieutenant General, and I'm quite Mr. Bohutsky. Mr. Victor has identified lots of questions. And recapping them, in fact, I'm raising them as well. So who is going to be the judge? What kind of crimes are they going to investigate, and the military police is going to investigate? Are they ready? Is the society ready for the establishment of the new authority? And who should it subordinate to? Who is giving the military ranks? And that concerns all the components of those triangle. When I was listening to Mr. Victor, I thought, I don't know. I thought yes. Indeed, I do not know whether it is possible to have some foreign elements of investigation. We've seen how it works. The ideal of democratic world is the U.S., the special prosecutor, the commissions which are established. Maybe we can use these kind of tools. So that is an open question, the question with open logics. We can't hear you. Just a moment. We can't hear you. Yes, we can hear you now. Please start from the beginning. Well, first of all, greetings. Greetings, both organizers and participants of the important question of military justice, considering the Russian war in Ukraine. Mr. Victor has asked very unexpected question, even for me, because in fact, Mr. Victor, the previous speaker, was the head of the military prosecutors, and he knows the answers to many of these questions. But despite this challenge for our discussion, I would like to return to the first question: what is the system of the military justice? For us to have the understanding of this definition and the legal phenomenon. What is the nature of this legal system, and what is the purpose of the military justice in the military field in the society? Are there any kind of standards of the military justice? If yes, then what are they? And of course, the practical issues which were already discussed, the resolving issues on the forming of the military justice system in Ukraine. It is a bit easier for me to cover this question. I guess it will be easier because besides practical experience, significant practical experience in the military justice, I also have quite a vast experience in scientific area, and now I'm researching, first of all, the system of the military justice. My analysis shows that in the framework of legal analysis, we have the integrity of institutional and organizational components, which have peculiarities caused by the military activities and military-civil relations. We have to consider the national legal system, and in the national legal system, we have a separate legal system with a property, with special properties, which has the law enforcement, law protection, and implementation of the military justice. And according to the Western legal tradition, this legal system, military justice, has military properties. The difference of the military justice from the other systems of the national law and the peculiarities of these systems give us the grounds to make the conclusion about different ways to resolve the problems and the way how they are formulated. And I guess we are talking about that already, about the many options, but the options to resolve this problem are limited by some certain consequences which are identified by the purpose of the law under martial law. The it has the defense properties, which leads to high-quality law enforcement and to provide justice, and at the same time resolving at most important task, which is the legal law enforcement. Military law enforcement is the part of the military justice. The military justice has a national characteristic, that is regarding can we invite someone to resolve this issue. It is internal issue of each country, but nevertheless there are some certain standards and requirements for forming the military policies for the states which belong to some certain systems of the collective security. And of course we mean about NATO system. Concluding, according to the Geneva Convention, they consider it to be defense, justice, and the system of the military justice are the directions of the defense directions of the country, and therefore the purpose is the law enforcement to enter also the military security. Two components, the main ones. The system of the military justice is identified as a separate legal system as operates regarding the servicemen, and in some of the cases regarding civilians. The main purpose of this system is the support of discipline and the order in the armed forces for their operational efficiency. As you understand, considering the fact that we are talking about the operational efficiency, and that is a definition. It's not Ukrainian. That is was suggested by India Vashnadze when he was working in the Geneva Center of the security sector control. In the national sector, military justice is separated from the justice as the consequence of the following causes. So the first of all, that is sector of defense, where military justice has the purpose, the military provision of security, which we will discuss, the military service, which is different because of the subject and the orders. So there are servicemen and in some cases civil-military relations. The system of military justice has some certain components which characterized for the relevant interaction, but oriented on the characteristics of their interdependence and interaction. The components of the military justice are the legislation, the legal grounds, the institutions, our institutional component. That is what Mr. Victor was telling us about, and of course we'll return to this. I'm very sorry for interrupting you. The thing is that, as Mr. Valery Chalis said, of course I would like to follow his advice to have the practical context. So let's discuss institutions. You understand, when we will be discussing on the level of the practical level without understanding of what we are talking about, in this case it's a discussion about nothing, because we will have different understanding, and in the end we will come to these issues and we will answer all the questions. So the third component of the military justice is the professional legal culture and procedure. If we don't understand this component, then we have nothing to be discussing. So that is organizational part of the military justice. Legislation as a normative standard has to be understood in the narrow and broader understanding and definition. In the broader one, that is the complex of legal documents of military law and other legislative documents which regulate the work of the militaries, and also in the narrow, that is the documents which identify the statuses of the institutions and identify the procedures and application of the norms of the law. And the institutions are the national police, military courts, military prosecution, and the specialized institution on legal support or the legal advocacy office. So there are quite theoretical provisions, but let's discuss the international standards of the justice. They are based on the following components: the rights of human rights and following the principles of justice. And second one is the specialization of the subject, which is military defense sector, and that is what we've mentioned. The the orientation of all military justice, except for the implementation of the rights of servicemen. They also in charge of the efficiency of the servicemen. In other words, there are those operational capacity of the armed forces the Geneva Center was referring to. The forming of the military justice has to be synchronized measures regarding the shifting into turning the national police into military police, the specialization of the the military prosecution in the office of the prosecutors, the legal support and transformation and establishment on the grounds of the specialized prosecution, the specialized military prosecution, the provision of the decision regarding the system of and state judges, and also a definition and regulation of the institutional specialization on the provision of the preliminary and secondary support to the servicemen. And is it possible, considering all the questions which Mr. Victor has asked? Yes, it is possible, and now I'm going to talk about it. In the context of the resolution, it is important the legal military police. So the status of the servicemen has to provide the status of the legal policy and the provision of the law enforcement in the country. Do you remember I was talking about military police? That is one of the directions, the state policy and law enforcement, and in the armed forces of Ukraine. And in this direction, protection of the rights of servicemen, reserved servicemen, identification and resolution of this task is identifying the status of the police. It's quite similar to what was said of both as the central authority, which has to meet the laws of Ukraine, but with one restriction, which is the independence of the implementation of the law enforcement by the police. The important is the question of the provision of the military police and the oriented on the final purpose and the military security. The resolution of this problem is in the coordination of the activities of the military police by the cabinet of the ministers or through the Ministry of Defense. This approach is correct. So in fact, you mean that is in the structure of the Ministry of Defense, subordinated to the Ministry of Defense? No, and once not, Minister of Defense, who is responsible for the forming of and implementation of the military policy. Military police, the Minister of Defense and the Ministry of Police, the mandate of the Minister of Defense when interacting with the military police. And this mandate will be regarding the identification of the questions which identify the work of the military issues that are the critical issues which have to be resolved. That is the first thing. And the second thing, that are the question regarding applying for the head of the military police to the cabinet of the ministers. Of course, it would have been good if we had some kind of certain grounds and some certain centers through the mandate of the president. But unfortunately, we do not have that in the constitution about the mandate. The president, as you know, as the chief commander in chief, he can appoint the heads of the other heads. In the legal act regarding the military police, we have to identify the position of the commander-in-chief, and in the structure of the military office, he has to be subordinated to the commander-in-chief, and he is one of the head commandment officers. And we have to identify the mandate of the commander-in-chief according to the law and his impact on the military police. And if it's not regarding the law enforcement, when it's important when applying the resolution. For example, the placement of the servicemen and keeping the order when doing that, and martial law, the countering the terroristic action and protecting the critical infrastructure. And according to the legislation, we have to foresee, except for those mandate which the police has a mandate that is additional mandate, we should not emphasize, but still the emphasis is still there, because without this kind of mandate, it is impossible. This service will not be full. The special law enforcement authority body, which will have no law enforcement capacity in the armed forces of Ukraine. The first, pre-court proceedings in criminal proceedings on the criminal crimes done by the reserve servicemen, and also about criminal crimes in the armed forces of Ukraine. That is approach the subject. The subject from the perspective of the subject. I don't want to be rude, but in fact, you are raising the level of discussion. It's kind of we are kind of academicians and scientists. So I would like it to be practical for the broader audience to understand it practically. So that. So first of all, big request from the simultaneous interpreter to speak a bit slower. That is a request to all of the participants of today's meeting. The only thing is that I would like to conclude what you've said. In simple words, you think that military police can exist, and it will suggest candidates, and it will be in the vertical of the Minister of Defense. And in addition to that, it has to investigate answering the questions we've had. It has to investigate all the crimes committed by the servicemen. Yes, I will correct you a bit, but all in all, it's correct. The vertical of the Minister of Defense is more or less because the minister has limited mandate when interacting with the military police. So Mr. Victor wants to open the discussion, and if you don't mind, let me finish my thought. So the first is his authority is limited. That is just forming the policies on the protection of the state, security of the state, and there are the priorities, in fact. The second one, the legal, the draft laws, the legal practice, preparing the draft laws for the Cabinet of Ministers, and also the international agreements, which is also something, and also suggesting the candidates of the military police, the only candidate who will be appointed by the Cabinet of Ministers, that is the head of the military police. The rest of the appointments have to be done by the head of the military police. The candidate for the position related to the pre-court proceedings and operation search activities, Mr. Serhiy was quite skeptical regarding that, but the current criminal code does not foresee any other way of the operational search activities. So operational search is mandatory, but the limits of it I do not agree completely. These limits are limited by the proceedings and identified. And of course, the grounds is that if we're talking about some other types of crimes or general crimes committed by the servicemen, it is also identified by the law. We do not have any other criminal code of Ukraine, and I do not think that there are kind of issues and that we need to emphasize these issues. And these positions can be appointed by the head of the national police to avoid the impact of the minister on this issue on the activities. In this case, there are some certain limitations, and also there are even bigger limitations on the impact of the commander-in-chief on the activities of the military police. But according to NATO standards, military police works closely with the armed forces of NATO, of the members of NATO. So we have to combine it, and this combination is in the framework of the legislation, and it is possible. So once again, I would like to clarify. It means that you mean that the Minister of Defense appoints the head of the military police, not appoints, but suggests the candidate. And then the head of the military police appoints on his vertical his subordinates. But I think that Mr. Chumak will have the question regarding the independence of the head of the military police, and that there might be some pressure on him. I completely understand the logics you are talking about, but that is a logic, and it is absolutely correct, and it is absolutely according to our legislation, because the central authority, it doesn't matter what kind of it, any kind of authority, it can be operating only through the relevant ministries, and Mr. Pavlov is through the Ministry of Defense, and in this case, it is similar to the Ministry of Internal Affairs. Because, in fact, we have to have the independent head of the national police, independent head of the border services, migration service, and all of the central executive authorities have to be independent, and their work has to be coordinated by the Ministry of Internal Affairs. So we do understand that these people are not independent. Yes, absolutely correct, and therefore I'm on just a PhD, and I'm not theoretician and practical. I'm I have deep practical experience, and I've seen how it has been done in the parliament. So let's be honest. The doctrine can be written. The doctrine will be correct, absolutely. And what about implementation? Implementation will be very simple. We will have a person who will be appointed by kind of Umerov and someone of his kind who will be working for him. Because except for appointment and also suggesting the candidate from the ministers to the cabinet of the ministers, our central ministers, unfortunately, they have the right regarding the other executive. They can correct their budget, they can form their budget, and they can direct their budget. And I want to answer this question. And through the budget, through the money, through the bonuses, through the other things, you can force any kind of executive authority to do something if the minister just wants it. And I think that the Minister of Defense would like to force to do something in the military police of Ukraine. So I will try to use the time better, because we have the people who didn't say even a word today. So 5 minutes. I would like to ask you, I need around 5 minutes to answer. But if we will have discussion, then so now we have discussion. So the first thing regarding the budget. Financing of the military police should be the separate part of the budget and not through the Ministry of Defense. In this case, lots of questions will be resolved. The second question regarding the appointment, Mr. Victor, lots of things depend on the on who is the minister. So we have different ministers with different surnames. There is a minister of defense and the society, and he is discussing with the society. There is a discussion that he is. He had corruptional issues, and there is another minister of defense who didn't do something he had to do, and then he left and he is abroad. But that is the issue of the personality. That is the issue of those who appoint these kind of ministers. So let's not be discussing the individuals, but let's discuss the provisions of the legislation and the constitution. And there is also another thing regarding the dependence. This issue we will see in the other cases related to the other institutions from the military justice. So that is the military ranks. The separate provisions on the military service in the military police. Yes, it is approved by the president, but he is commander-in-chief, and you can do nothing with that. The separate provision on the on serving. The military ring to the colonel belongs to the head of the military police. Are there any problem? I see no problems. What else we can say about the independence? So you've said it already, and we can agree with that, and everyone understand that the national police is dependent from the decisions of the Minister of the Internal Affairs. But is it okay for us? Okay, maybe we do not need to establish anything, but maybe we do not need to develop anything. Maybe we have to admit it, and that is the end of the discussion. So how can we continue developing our state? We cannot use this approach. So let's discuss the military prosecution. I will answer you immediately because I would have said that I have already the answers. And I have the answers on how we can continue working, considering what we have. If you would like, I can finalize and I can answer what kind of situation we have. Mr. Victor, I know what is the situation right now, and probably I understand what you would like to suggest. I respect your opinion, and I understand that it's also possible. From the very beginning, I stated that there are lots of different options exist, but these options have to be oriented on some certain consequences. If the consequence is not well perceived, if there are some certain factors which are not taken into account, then we'll have what we observe. I'm very sorry, but stating nowadays that everyone who made an unauthorized abandonment of the military unit and they will have amnesty, that is incorrect. That is the same thing. So we should not. We have to admit that that is a criminal crime, and there should be some consequences and decisions made, and the consequences have to take some time. And we can give the option to correct it, to give the opportunity to serve, of course. So that is a peculiarity of the criminal code in the military justice. So let's discuss the military justice and military prosecution. So what are you saying about the prosecutor's office? Well, in this case, the question can be resolved in the same way, in fact, by the specialized prosecution or prosecutor's office in defense, and it has to be turned in the specialized military prosecution prosecutor's office. The legislation, the way how they work have to be identified by the legislation. So that means that there should be the provisions of the legislation. At the moment, we have the regime of regulating of the activities of the specialized anti-corruption Specialized Anti-Corruption Commission, and that is the way how it should work regarding these military prosecutors' office. The structure has to support the unified system, meaning that the prosecutor, the military prosecution, the regional and oblast, the department of the, and the separate, the head of the specialized military Military Prosecutor's Office, the provisions on serving in the specialized Military Prosecutor's Office, which will have additional qualification requirements to be appointed there, and regarding the status in the relevant prosecutor's office, the military ranks have to be done by the deputy of the prosecutor's office. By the way, absolutely meeting the requirements of the current legislation. And it is stated there that the order of serving where the military position, and that all of these are not military positions, have to be regulated by the special provision. And this kind of order is applied now regarding some of the institutions which work in defense sector, so to say, namely the technical information technical security service. And as for the judges, the situation is similar to the military prosecutor's office with some peculiarities. So what are the military courts? Military courts are specialized military courts, and as for the specialization, the Constitution foresees that we have it is based on the specialization and territorial division, and how these principles will be applied to the territorial principle and specialization. In the Constitution, we have nothing about that, but there is it refers to the law of Ukraine, and that is the law on the courts. And also we have the regional courts, a military appeal court, so we need only one for in the entire Ukraine, and the military chamber, the part of the court. Considering the fact that the status of the serviceman is one of the requirements of the for getting this to be appointed, there should be the provision approved for the work and for their work in the courts. They have to have the military chamber, and we have the disciplinary chamber now, and there should be the military chamber, and the provision on serving will be prepared by the higher justice council. And as for the military ranks, I'm very sorry, but all the judges are appointed by the president. The military ranks will have to be given to the judges by the president, of course, and the higher council, the higher justice court is just suggesting the candidates, and the president gives the order. So I do not see any kind of dependence here. So let me recap what you've said regarding the prosecution. So there is a suggestion for it to be the deputy head prosecutor, the military prosecutor, who would be controlling the board of the military prosecutor's office. And as for the courts, in this case, you suggest the territorial, the courts of the first instance all around Ukraine, and one appeal court, and the separate institution for the military court, kind of military court. So I would like to. So we have to move forward. One more thing, one more remark, one more important thing. We have forgotten about one more institution. So we have another issue that the serviceman has a right to have the legal support. The question of the preliminary legal support is not being resolved, and also there is a question of the secondary legal support free of charge. It is also not being resolved, and these questions have to be resolved, and therefore we, namely me, and not only me, but I can say that we suggest to make the amends to the relevant law legislation, and to foresee the specialized the specialized position for these authorities, and it has to be approved, and the government has to approve the provision on the free legal support for the servicemen. So that are our suggestion. And another question regarding the preparation, the education, so to say. Of course, the legal education for the prosecutors and for the judges is the preliminary qualification requirement. Of course, considering the specialization and considering the fact that it is and the way how it is resolved in most of the countries, military preparation, military knowledge of military of serving, they have those who want to serve in the military prosecutor's office in military court. So what is the level of this preparation? It depends. For the military police, it has to be the level which should be higher. And for the prosecutors and the judges of the military courts and military prosecutors, it will be quite general, but not the basic one. That should be the special preparation, but they have to be taught all the military subjects, because they have to understand what they are working with. I mean, the judges and the prosecutors. Speaking of the evidences, Mr. Victor, in Nazarov's case, the judge of the first instance, I'm very sorry, without the context of Lieutenant General, we will not understand it. So that's a bit different context. So that is evaluation of the evidence. The judges of the first instance was reading the results of the expertise. The colleagues were reading the expertise in this case, and the court of the Supreme Court also reviewed these conclusion. The expertise is one of the evidences, and therefore you need the special skills to be able to make this expertise. And I agree with you, Mr. Victor. And if you need to, you have to find the consultation from the relevant specialist. And here I'm going to interrupt you. We have 9 minutes for our specialist to ask them one practical thing from Mr. Badrak to return the discussion on the way we wanted it to be. So use a specialist. Each of you will have 5 minutes, and I'm going to be very strict. Let's keep the time, and then we will have analytical, informational addition, and those who didn't have the word will have the opportunity to say a few words. So those who didn't have this opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Vasil. Why I wanted to ask the question, because first of all, we are specialized, both specialists. I would like you to ask us to show some issues of the military justice, but I want all of us to understand that we are going from the society, but not from the problem. It is important for us whether development of the military justice will help the society. And I would like to ask the question, very concrete one, for you to answer, whether there is someone who can be in charge of this question. For example, I live in my private house, and next to me there are 20 houses where men are hiding who do not want to be mobilized, and then there are cars which are delivering food there. The parents are hiding their sons, but everyone knows that they are there. Can military police, for example, come to them with operational search activities, and can they take them out of the houses? Because the rest of the people whose sons are at war, they asking like, how come? So that is a question of the motivation. The society, the average citizen, in fact, doesn't care whether we will have the military justice or not. They, as citizens, want the justice to be in place. For example, another question. One person lives on the left bank. He just escaped from the army. He has a document that he is still serving. He is driving the car, and he has a document. He is working now on the plant outside the Kyiv. he's going during the curfew hour and he says, I'm serving and goodbye. And he is laughing at it. He's mocking all of the servicemen. So who has to resolve these kind of questions? And is it possible to do that through military justice? And one more remark. Twice mentioned Mateus and his lieutenant general rank. And I thought after this, if the military prosecutors have colonel... General Colonel, and I would like to hear whether the Commander-in-Chief, Petro Poroshenko, is guilty for the Ilovaisk tragedy. 4 minutes. I just set a timer. First question. It's not something the military police is in charge of, but the military police, speaking of those who are avoiding mobilization, they cooperate with the centers of recruitment and with the national police, but they are not coming to your homes and they are not getting you out of home because that is not the mandate of the military police. The second question is military police. Military police, because the serviceman is a subject to the crime, and he is under the control of the military police. And as for Ilovaisk tragedy, the thing is that in 2014, I was a military prosecutor of the southern region, and this tragedy was on the territory which we were in charge. But even at that time, the person you've mentioned was acting, and for some reason he got the colonel general position rank. I even do not tell this surname to my children because he has done so many evil things. But at the same time, the military prosecutor's office did what they had. They investigated all the military crimes there, and it was a tragedy. I wouldn't assess it that the commander-in-chief of that time, Mr. Poroshenko, is guilty for that, or the head of the chief commander. And also, I would not assess in this way the activities of those generals, of 2 generals and 2 colonels, who are now the part of this case. So in the first case, there is anti-terroristic operation, that are terroristic operations and war crimes regarding our servicemen by the Russian aggressor. In the second case, the current situation, that is the crime of aggression by the Russian servicemen. But in the end, during this investigation of this war crime, we can assess the work of our servicemen and other officials. Speaking of the political responsibility, Mr. Valentin, I'm not ready to answer this question. Thank you very much, Mr. Victor. You have... I will try to answer also those questions. Please do not rush up. So Mr. Pavlo has said it really great in the end of the speech about specialization. So that is a way out. So that is a way out of the situation we are observing at the moment, specialization. At the moment, we have the State Bureau of Investigation, which is investigating all these cases committed by all the crimes committed by the servicemen. So there is a separate division which is investigating, the special division which is investigating all the military crimes. So do you want to establish another one, the central authority, and to spend lots of money on that? To develop bureaucracy for what? You have it. So you mean like you mean the specialization in the State Bureau of Investigation? Yes, they have the specialized prosecutor's office in this sphere. The people who had ranks and they took it off, and they continue working, and they have. And now speaking of the specialization of the judges. Also, why do we need more bureaucratic authorities if in every city court we can identify 3 judges who will be in charge of the military crimes? In the appeal courts, okay, 5 judges who will be specialized in military crimes. In Supreme Court, without the separate chamber, we can establish this kind of specialization. I totally agree with Mr. Pavlo. We need to educate them. And we have the Defense Academy. 3 months, 3 months for judges, 3 months for the investigator, 3 months for the prosecutor. Good courses. We develop the course for them. We develop doctrine. The PhD can read the course for them in the Academy of Defense, and we can prepare the same specialists, the same ones we have at the moment. Answering your question, the National Police. We're talking about people who the National Police have to come and to take away those who are avoiding mobilization. That are their mandate and their right. And if there is someone there, in this case, the Center of Recruitment and the Military Recruitment Center knows about it, and the National Police can come and they can, those who did not this notification, then you have the reason. So there are no. If 3 times they did not accept notification, the National Police comes. So it's not about the military police, but the disciplinary measures in the existing authorities. Let's not be inventing bicycle wheel. We just need to sit on this bicycle and go. So let's move forward. I have the question to Mr. Alexei Yezhak. And as far as I understood, we had the specialized discussion of the 2 military prosecutors. Mr. Victor is for the practical context, and he is discussing how can we resolve the current situation where we are now. And at the same time, Mr. Pavlo is saying one very good, sorry, not one, but one which I understood, so to say, one very good thing that according to all the standards, NATO standards, this kind of vertical has to exist. Absolutely no. I think that half of NATO members do not have this vertical. I think that half of them do not have. All the European countries which have parliamentary form of democracy, they have to. So the question regarding the international context, how does it work abroad in the other countries? Thank you very much for the opportunity to say something. In our consortium, we are lawyers, but we understand some certain aspects, and we can, of course, add a bit. The things which our 2 main experts said, Mr. Valentin, we want to understand it even better. But of course, NATO standards are very important, because if we're talking about the military justice or the defense procurement or the other issues which we discuss in the state authorities, in this case, these questions are mandatory. And different sides appeal to the NATO standards, and they say that according to the European standards, NATO standards, we need to do this or that. And considering what I know, the system in any NATO countries, military crimes are being investigated. They are punished, and from this point of view, the system is working in the same way. It can be different, and if we're talking about NATO standards, in this case, we won't find the single answer on how we have to do everything. But we can find lots of models on how we can develop it. Some of them are absolutely military ones, like in the US, and they have not just the separate authorities. They have, so to say, the kind of criminal code, so there is legislation sphere, and it regulates everything until even the prisons which we were discussing. There are absolutely different systems where there are seamless integration of the military justice. For example, Germany and northern countries of Europe. There are 2 transit systems where the military justice authorities can be the separate ones, but with limited jurisdiction. And also there is a system when there is the same specialization, like, for example, there are the chambers or the separate divisions in the civil structures. And, for example, Poland, if we're talking about our neighbors, Poland is closer to the American system. The only thing is that we can even identify some legal system there, and it is quite close, even though not everywhere. But as for the central ones, the central countries, it seems like they have very big reserves, and the country which is ready to fight, but the system is quite similar to German's one, and there is nothing special there. The only thing is that in every NATO country, as far as I see, there is something regarding military police, something special. There are some models which are where military police in the armed forces, or that can be a kind of autonomous body from the military of defense, or something like gendarmerie. And we have to do something in this regarding the military police. But if we consider the models, whatever we do, if this system will be efficient, if the law of justice will be there, it will be fine. And the only thing I would like to add, I think it was not discussed, there is a question of the separate body and a military issue. For example, in the UK, there are military courts, but there are not servicemen working there. And that is an issue which is interesting. Servicemen working in this system and some separate authorities. So once again, everything which we will do, and it will be efficient, and it will be according to the legislation without corruption, everything will meet the standards. You have your own opinion regarding considering what the analysis you have conducted. What would have been the most applicable in Ukrainian case? If we consider the opinion of the Geneva Center, which our speakers were referring to, so we need to look at Poland and to do something. Because if we didn't have any problems, in this case, we wouldn't have been discussing that on the one hand. But on the other hand, I think that, well, the specialization is a very good word, even though we need to do something additional to what we have at the moment. Because if everything was good, we can say that we have a specialization, but we don't have problem. But we have the problem, so we need to do something. But I would like to repeat what Mr. Volodymyr said. We would like to understand what we need to do, and we need to think about it to move forward. Okay, very briefly, for us to record it. What is Polish example? Polish example, Polish case, I'm not saying that we have to copycat them, but in Poland, they have a separate justice system, and therefore, if we consider Polish case, Poland is quite different from us. Finland is quite similar, but according to Geneva Center, taking account of the discussion they had around this, it is that Ukraine has to do something because the system which exists so far is not resolving all the problems. We do not have the system. The system is absent. Well, that is a problem. That is the first thing. And the second thing I would like to draw attention to, for example, Germany's case, the constitution of case, Article 96. During the defense, so they do not call it martial law, it is a defense regime, they can establish military crime courts. But then there is a question, considering our situation, how can we establish it? When we should establish it? When the aggressor is already here and he occupied the territory. And the second thing is that why do we perceive the example of the other countries in this way? Did they go the way we went since 2014? That is the first. That is the first thing. And the last thing, that is also the question to our moderator. If at the moment the situation with the crimes in the country means that 1/3 of the crimes is military, is related to the military sector, 493,000 cases. General crimes, so all in all, we will have 150,000 cases committed by the servicemen. Is it a system? Is it efficient? You mean 493,000 cases committed in 2024? I will tell you the exact numbers. So all in all, we have 492, 470 crimes. Out of them, 93,900 that are the military crimes, and the general crimes committed by the servicemen, according to the prosecutors, that is plus 50,000-60,000. So almost 1/3 of crimes committed by the servicemen in military sector. Historically, that is how it works, because that is what we faced during the Second World War in the US and in the UK. So that is the way it works. And that is the reason why the system of the military justice has to be in place and why it has to be operating. At the moment, we do not have the system, and Mr. Victor is wrong only in one place. When he was living, that was how it worked. There was a specialized division in the State Investigation Bureau, and now it doesn't exist. So what I would like to mention, when you say there is no system, or there is system, Polish system, other system, efficient, not efficient, establishment of the additional divisions or some additional authorities or the elements in the authorities, it does not make something efficient. We just cannot understand that efficiency is in fact the full implementation of what we already have. And if we implemented what we have, in this case, everything would have been efficient. We can create whatever we want. We can create 3 anti-corruption bureaus, whatever we want. And we can give them whatever mandates they want. But if the discipline is not the place, if they are not following the laws, if the culture, the legal culture will remain on the same level as it is at the moment, it will not change anything. Absolutely. We're discussing about not experience, which we do not have. There is no golden standard. There is no golden standard. A place where there is the legal culture, the legal tradition, it works. And where you do not have anything, it doesn't work. Even if you put on the crown, nothing will work. Even if the military police will wear the crown, nothing will change, because it will work in this way. If the corruption in our country, or so to say, the corruptional component in the law enforcement works, do you think we had greater standards for the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine, and what do we have in 10 years? So I dedicated most of my efforts I ever did in my life, and what do we have in the end of the day? We have the same standards as the rest of the law enforcement authorities have, the integrity standards, And why do we need to be talking about that? If we establish something and the integrity will not be in place, it will be efficient. No, it won't. And that's it. Or we are doing and we are saying that there is a system and we are making someone responsible. By the way, first of all, political responsibility. Why Rakhmanin is not here? That is what I wanted to say. So there is no Mr. Rakhmanin. So political responsibility launches all these things. Not criminal, not executive, not disciplinary, political. Political responsibility starting from the Commander-in-Chief, President, Prime Minister, Minister of Defense, and the rest of them. Because when you find out these kind of facts, Minister of Defense retires and the rest of them retires. And then there's a political practice in the country, and then it works. And when nobody cares that something happened and no one had political punishment for that, and political system doesn't work, and it won't be working because the responsibility of people is not in place. Politicians, after these kind of debates, we have argued and we have told, but politicians, they are the ones who have to do all of these things. They have to put everything on the shelves. They have to debunk it on the... So I'm running. I'm very sorry. I need to take my children from schools. I'm very sorry. I'm very, very sorry. Thank you very much for a great discussion. The point is that who will listen to us for the people to be responsible, it has to be discussed also in media. And that is content, that is a question about content, about information. That is a question to Mr. Serhiy, who is online, and to Mr. Samuz, because when we're talking about the corporate system, that was a requirement of the society. Many people did not understand it, but nevertheless, Mr. Victor, one more thing, please listen to me. Mr. Victor, I would like to say something to you. You started very nicely with definitions, except the justice of the normative and applicable. There is a spirit of the right. It's not something that the culture is in charge of, but also the content, communication, security. What is that? That is modern life. You are talking really nicely, but about what? About the Second World War? About when? Our speed of military actions is something that NATO has never faced, and even those who are watching us from the outer space, they have never seen things like that. We have barbarians on the one hand, on the other hand, we have the legal protection of each citizen. Each citizen is against the canon meat, and then there is a question. So, has someone prepared the citizen for the canon meat? Are the politicians guilty for that? No, I think that the entire world we have to blame, because they have brought out Putinism on the level of the civilizational threat. That is just for you, because the question of the definitions, and now the question. Let me say one thing. We, as Center of the Communication and Coordination of Security, we are saying that against Ukraine, there is no war. Against Ukraine, we have the local genocide aggression. That is absolute. And in legal science, there is nothing like that. There is no genocidal policy, genocidal activities, and genocide management. And Putinism has established this, has created it, and there is no answer to this. And therefore, the system you're talking about should have started with working with definitions. So there are processes, and we have to form the definitions, and they have to work for the entire world. And the question of the security of our army, that is the security of Europe and the world, because Ukraine is alone here, and you understand that the Ukraine will not stand this war, and that is not the issue about the sovereignty, that is an issue about the civilization work. So what does Ukraine do? Ukraine takes part in this civilization war, but what are the criteria for it? One criteria, which is at the moment quite clearly legal, that is being human, and inhumanity are the definition of the legal signs that are legal terms and terms of the fairness and the justice Mr. Victor was talking about, because the question related to justice are the biggest one. And now the question regarding the justice towards whom, and I really liked Mr. Vasil said that the question of mobilization. What is the question of mobilization? In fact, Putinism works through the processes of inhumanity. Do not confuse it with dehumanization. And also demobilization. Demobilization, not only Ukraine, but also demobilization in the world, first of all in Europe. Look at the polls in Europe. How are young people ready to take part in war? So then there is a question that we can prepare legal experts. You are going to prepare legal experts to work with FPV drones and other things related to leather warfare. So the process of security from the military one transforms into the civilization societal way. The security is in place or it is absent. And the question is that security becomes also, by the way, the criteria of civilization. And Ukraine conventionally not just demonstrates everything, but let's remember of the Heavens 100. Everyone was saying that Ukrainians do not exist. There is no nation named Ukraine. And the Heaven 100 has shown that they are not just human beings, they are the examples for the entire world. And some philosophers said that we can see more Europe in Kiev than in the European Union, and that is something that is remaining, and that is a sense, there is sense to support it. I deeply appreciate our organizers. I deeply appreciate for the system of the consortium. Our center is quite specific and cosmic, because terminology and technologies, they are not very traditional. And our colleagues are working for the Ukraine to legalize the civilizational vision. And that is what we are doing. And then the question of today's discussion. Practically, what we are discussing what we had yesterday and the day before yesterday. Let's not compare anything, our situation with the Second World War. We have civil society, we have Ukrainians against the barbarians, against genocide from the nations on the territory of the Russian Federation. So there are different things, and it's good that we have such deep specialists, because that is something we have to develop. But so I deeply appreciate your support. Thank you very much. I would like to invite Olga Rashatilina, Commissioner of the President on the Protection of the Servicemen. Please take the place. Ms. Olga, you are holding the position for 1 month, and there was a comment that 3,876 requests were from the servicemen and their families. And of course, there is a question of the justice, and it is relevant for the servicemen. And also there is a question of demobilization, even though the commander-in-chief said that it's impossible nowadays. And what is the main thing about this context and related to today's topic? What is your mandate to do something for it to be? So first of all, I wanted to continue the cosmic terminologies. First of all, I would like to thank organizers, because for me these kind of discussions are very important, and I'm not a lawyer, but nevertheless I work for a long time and next to them, and that is the first thing. And the second thing is that for a few months I live in this discussion, and how we can, how the ombudsman can be in the system of the management system. And I hope my colleagues will understand my pain, how difficult it is due to the limitations, restrictions by the constitutions, and due to some different political restrictions. And therefore, the question of functionality is the question which we are facing. We were discussing with Mr. Serhiy Rakhmanin, and we had a discussion. There is a political reasonability, and also there is a legal factor, and how it will be implemented in the general system. So at the moment, that is important. I'm the commissioner of the president and on protection of the rights of servicemen and their families, and the functionality of the commissioner is defined, is coordination and provision of the recommendations to the chief commander and the president of Ukraine. And we are moving towards some much more complicated structure. Mr. Vasily has left, but when I was going to them, coming to him with the complicated cases, I was always telling them, we have to start with the establishment of the office of the ombudsman, or the institution which will be in charge of the rights of servicemen. Because we were mentioning Colonel General, I was starting working with with this area when he was in charge of the investigations, and I've seen the system that was so he was electing who have to be punished, and I had to interfere. I had to organize the journalist investigations. I have to defend them publicly, and I lived in those systems when you have to be protecting all the time, when you do not have the military justice, but you have a very selective justice. And at that time, we had an idea of the institution of the military ombudsman according to the international standards, NATO standards, and we were preparing different options of the draft laws, and we considered it to be parliamentary institutions. And unfortunately, the previous not both Petro Poroshenko and the first years of Mr. Zelensky were not kind of supporting the establishment of this institution, and we had we were trying to add the institution, the ombudsman of the rights of the servicemen. We wanted it to be the part of the legislation, and we now foresee the option, at least in the part about the function of the president, we will have democratic protection of the security. We will just add the military ombudsman there. De facto, it is going to be consultative authority of the president, because the constitution limits us in mandate. He cannot establish new institutions, but he can establish consultative authorities. And then, by the law, we can establish we can describe the functionality of this authority. And of course, that is not the perfect option, but that is the grounds we would like to start with. And we will move further to the discussion on the military justice. And of course, the need for the new system of justice in the military sector exists, and I think that everyone agrees with this in this room. And I agree with the last speaker that we have to move with the speed of war. We cannot be postponing, because we postponed it too much. We faced the full-scale invasion without the infrastructure of military justice and protection of the rights of service. And we were responding to certain situations, those scandals which we are facing and those arrests which we are facing, that are just the consequences of the absence of this infrastructure. But nevertheless, I would like to give a few comments on different speeches we've heard. First of all, Mr. AWOL, when he was talking about the military police, maybe that is going to be the question, because we are talking about the military police, military prosecution. So let me start with the military police, which is going to be in the vertical of the Ministry of Defense. So it will be subordinated to the Ministry of Defense. But then we're talking about the armed forces. And what about the other armed organizations? So the State Security Service, the intelligence, and the others. So what kind of authority will be working for them? So that is one of the first questions I have if we're talking about the system you have presented. The second question is, okay, so here we were discussing a lot the investigations of so-called general cases. And sometimes I'm frustrated when the same people who are talking about the combat immunity and military immunity, it means that we are not investigated. It means that we give the opportunity to the commanders to make the decision on the commanders' competence to make the decision. But if we are talking about the court, it means that we are going to consider their actions. For example, the Nazarov's general case, as a journalist, I was following this case. It's not, we're not talking about the mistake on the mistake, but in this case, he didn't take the account of the reports of the reconnaissance. And can the courts decide where there is neglect of the documents, and in which cases can we be talking about the one like we are talking about? What you mean? There are some cases where we do not need the military courts for, and also this even the civilian can understand that with understanding of the legal sphere. So we have to be talking about the military justice, but first of all, it has to be formed, and we have been discussing that on the grounds of the absolutely different culture, respect to the person in the military sector, and that should be the simultaneous processes. And we were mentioning the new structure transferred to the corpuses, and that is what I'm discussing about. That yes, indeed, we are forming the new structure, but we are forgetting about the principles on the grounds of which about the new culture. The culture which has to be the grounds of this culture. And the grounds have to be the respect to the human rights. And that is first of all, my pain, and second of all, my task. I think extremely difficult to give the understanding to those who are in charge of forming of the policies, that the respect to the freedoms and rights of the people has to be the grounds for any kind of work. Even during the war, when we see dehumanization, absolute dehumanization of everything around us, I think that our weapon is the respect to the rights and freedoms. So that is very brief. I'm very sorry I asked the organizers, do not make this speaker, because I do not feel I do not feel that I have enough expertise in this area. That is my opinion as a person who works a lot with these matters practically. And sometimes it's very hard to make some very deep conclusions when 24/7 you're responding thousands of messages. But that is a challenge. The specialists, and I hope they will be able to answer. And therefore, it was very interesting for me to hear this discussion. I made lots of notes, and once again, I would like to thank for the invitation and for the organization of this meeting. I have only one clarification. Now we have only four left. So what are the numbers now? I haven't seen the last one. In the beginning of the week, we had 4,100 around these numbers. So very briefly. The conclusion, Serhiy Zurets and Mr. Samuj. So what Defense Express would have written about in the end of this discussion? Mr. Serhiy. Greetings to all our participants. Indeed, a consortium of defense which unites different structures. First of all, it directs us to find the ways to improve the efficiency of the state military administration. And one of the more key questions is the justice questions. If we ignore the legal way, in this case, we cannot be discussing we have to find the grounds to somehow change the situation, both with unauthorized amendment of the positions, because we can see what we can see on these examples, that is selective justice and the approaches which create the issues, lead to lack of trust to the system. So we are now in the state when we have to find the solutions, because the existing system doesn't work, and we have to find the options which will be more efficient, and we have to. That is a challenge which, in fact, there is no state which has similar challenge. So let's find the way out together, the most efficient one. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I was... so maybe, Mikhail, maybe you can recap and we'll finalize. Unfortunately, today without questions, but nevertheless, today we had... I felt that I am on the lecture on, so to say, military law. We kind of spent one lesson. So, in fact, that was an express course on military justice. Not only military justice, in fact, the systematic approach to resolve the issues which we have. And consortium of the defense security tries to find those vulnerabilities which exist in our national resilience. We are discussing them, and we are trying to find the ways out. And one of the problematic sectors of the activity is military justice, but that is not just military justice as something which we can be discussing separately. Why we're discussing? Because there are problems. There are problems during the war which we have to resolve because they decrease our ability to defend, and they decrease our capacity of our system. So when we're talking about 100,000 people who abandon their position, it means that we have the issues. So, and we are thinking how we can resolve. And then the specialists, like the ones we've heard today, the general, they are telling us how it works theoretically, and then we can initiate the political discussion, maybe in the parliament, maybe in the parliaments, in the committees, and of course we can engage the relevant specialists to launch the process and to resolve some specific questions. So we need to resolve the issue of the abandonment of the positions. Of course, it's a very complex question, but from the point of view of the system, of the state system, with how we fight it, I think that establishment of the military police is really relevant, because if these issues exist and the system is not able to overcome them, then we have to establish the system which is able to overcome them. So we have to have this discussion on the political level, and if we need to establish the military police, let's establish it. And then we will discuss later whether it's a system of the Ministry of Defense, or maybe it has to be subordinated to the Commander-in-Chief if we need to cover some other authorities, even though maybe the military police will be in charge of the military sector. So, I mean, that are the political issues, and I think that we have fulfilled our task for today. We have raised this question. We are launching it on the political level, and let's hope that it will be resolved in the same speed. So we are in the speed of war. And by the way, the comment, why it works in the different ways in different countries, because we cannot compare the experience of the US, which had the constant military operations, and for example Germany, which after the Second World War was Pacific. And speaking of Ukraine, I can say that Ukraine will continue moving towards militarization of our society, because whatever they say, whatever processes will face soon, but nevertheless Ukraine will get ready for the next war, because we know that the Russian Federation will not disappear. The empire will be getting ready for the new war, and we have to get ready to the next war, and it foresees the militarization of our society. That is resilience, mobilization of the citizens for the war. And if we have militarization of the society, then the military justice has to be efficient to resolve all the rest of the question. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. I would like to say that even on the media level, me as a media expert, I was interested. So I started the question to Mr. Chumak, the triangle, prosecution, court, and military police, and both generals of justice say that we have lawyers, and it's true. And also we have ombudsman. I mean, like, for those who would like to listen to this discussion, first they will see lots of arguments and lots of discussions for the further discussion. Thank you very much for your participation. So before this we had Victor Chumak, Mikhailo Smys, Pavlo Bohutsky, Valentin Bartak, Serhiy Zhurecko, Mikhailo Samus, Alexei Yezhak were the participants of the discussion. Thank you, Ukraine Crisis Media Center. Thank you, everyone, and see you next time. And see you the next time when we'll have the relevant discussion. Thank you very much.